The growing conflict between government and faith. Ever wonder what's really behind the dollar in your wallet? What if I told you that what you think is money is actually just a trap designed to keep you in debt? Stay tuned to uncover the hidden truth about our financial system. In contemporary society, many individuals who subscribe to the supremacy and authority of God are experiencing an increasing conflict with the presumed supremacy and authority of government. This conflict arises from a belief that one can only serve one master, either God or government. As government expands its reach and authority, it increasingly casts itself in a role similar to that of a divine entity. This shift is not merely philosophical but is reflected in tangible governmental actions that seem to encroach upon both personal liberties and religious beliefs. Footnote: This section introduces the central conflict between the belief in serving God and the growing authority of government, particularly as government begins to encroach upon personal and religious freedoms. Government overreach, acts of control and coercion. As government expands its power, it engages in activities that many would deem unethical or even illegal, such as kidnapping, torture, and assassination, all funded by taxpayers. Through various forms of taxation, including the taxation of wages and earnings, the government places individuals in bondage through debt. These acts are not only violations of personal freedoms but also directly contradict moral teachings, particularly those that emphasize the sanctity of individual rights. The government's actions, under the guise of serving the public good, now resemble practices that are condemned by ethical and religious standards. Footnote: This section examines the government's increasing power and its actions that undermine personal freedoms, equating them with morally questionable acts such as kidnapping and torture. In God We Trust, a historical declaration against government control. The phrase "In God we trust" on U.S. currency was not intended to affirm religious belief but to make a bold statement against the monarchical authority of King George III. The Founding Fathers of the United States, while deeply religious, recognized that God granted individuals unalienable rights, and that government was created to serve the people, not to exert dominance over them. The phrase "on currency" was a defiant declaration that Americans place their trust in God and not in any earthly king or government. This historical context underscores the founding principles that government is a servant of the people, not their master. Footnote: This section explores the historical meaning behind the phrase "In God we trust" on U.S. currency, highlighting its original purpose as a declaration of independence from the authority of the British monarchy. The illusion of money, understanding the Federal Reserve Note. One of the most fundamental misunderstandings in modern economics is the concept of money itself. The term dollar on currency does not represent money in its traditional sense. Historically, a dollar was defined as money measured in gold or silver. However, the Federal Reserve Note is not backed by any physical commodity, but instead represents a debt owed to the government. It is, in essence, an IOU, a promissory note rather than money. By accepting these notes, individuals unwittingly become debtors to the government, responsible for paying back the interest through taxes, fines, and fees. Footnote: This section explains the nature of Federal Reserve notes, clarifying that they are not true money but instead debt instruments that bind individuals to financial obligations to the government. The Federal Reserve's role in the debt system. The Federal Reserve has admitted that neither paper currency nor deposits have any intrinsic value. Their value is based solely on the confidence people have that they can exchange them for real goods and services. This concept highlights the fiction of the dollar's value. Its worth is not intrinsic but dependent upon trust in the system. The Federal Reserve's power to create money out of thin air and demand repayment with interest creates a perpetual cycle of debt that ultimately harms the public. Rather than being a medium of exchange, Federal Reserve notes function as a mechanism of control and economic enslavement. Footnote: This section outlines the Federal Reserve's admission that its currency has no intrinsic value, reinforcing the idea that money, as printed by the Federal Reserve, is merely an instrument of debt. The cost of using fiat currency, a system of economic enslavement. The usage of Federal Reserve notes comes with profound consequences. By accepting these notes, you are not merely receiving money but are entering into a contract of debt with the government. This debt, backed by nothing of value, binds you to a system where your labor, goods, and services are exchanged for obligations rather than real value. The true cost of this system is far more insidious than simple inflation. It is a system of economic suffocation that extracts wealth from the public and entraps them in a perpetual cycle of indebtedness. Footnote: This section discusses the negative impact of fiat currency, explaining how Federal Reserve notes serve as a contract of debt that binds individuals to a system of economic control. The Federal Reserve and its role in national debt. The Federal Reserve, by continually issuing debt-based currency, has placed the U.S. government into a never-ending cycle of borrowing. This results in an ever-increasing national debt, as each dollar issued is a loan that must be repaid with interest. The cycle perpetuates itself, as the government continues to borrow to meet its obligations, pushing the country further into debt. Meanwhile, the real value of the dollar diminishes, further exacerbating the economic crisis. The Federal Reserve's actions ensure that debt remains a permanent fixture of the U.S. economy. Footnote: This section elaborates on the role of the Federal Reserve in perpetuating national debt through the issuance of debt-backed currency, leading to economic instability and diminished purchasing power. The need for change, moving beyond debt and fiat currency. The current financial system, based on debt and fiat currency, is unsustainable. It has led to widespread economic inequality and has left the public vulnerable to manipulation by the Federal Reserve and government. The time has come for individuals to reconsider their reliance on debt-based money and to demand a financial system that does not tie their labor and wealth to unbacked currency. A solution will require bold action to restore the value of money and reclaim financial sovereignty. Footnote: This section calls for systemic change in the financial system, advocating for a move away from debt-based currency and a return to a more equitable and sustainable financial structure. Conclusion: Breaking free from the chains of fiat currency. The current financial system enslaves individuals to perpetual debt and economic instability. By relying on Federal Reserve notes, a debt-backed currency, individuals unwittingly enter into a system that strips away personal freedoms and financial sovereignty. To restore true economic independence, we must move away from unbacked currency and reclaim control over our financial futures. The solution lies in rejecting the false value of fiat currency and demanding a return to a system based on real value and sustainable wealth. Footnote: This section emphasizes the need to break free from the cycle of debt imposed by fiat currency and advocates for a financial system based on tangible value and individual economic freedom. Now that you know the truth about the Federal Reserve and the debt system, what's your next move? It's time to take control of your financial future. Subscribe to find out how to break free from this cycle.